Marvel Comics 1000 was released this week, the culmination of 80 years of publishing history for America's #1 comic book company. But how does it stack up? Well, it's pretty good. There's some good, there's some not so good, and, thankfully, there's some great. There's even some excellent pages in this one-shot. One-shot? Wait, I thought this was number 1000. Well, you might recall in the past couple years, DC has put out Action Comics number 1000, as well as Detective Comics number 1000. But even then, they didn't get there honestly, because if you remember the New 52 reboot in 2011, I believe, they restarted Action Comics and Detective Comics at issue 1, and then tried to go back to legacy numbering, which is a trick that Marvel and DC have been pulling for more than a few years now, which means that at this point, honestly, the longest genuinely running volume of an American comic book is probably Spawn, which celebrates its 300th issue next week. So Todd McFarlane, deserves a round of applause for that, for resisting the urge to renumber. But we should also mention, Savage Dragon not too far behind, and Eric Larson doing him one better by writing and drawing every single issue of that, even going so far as to repeat an issue, number 13, when the original one was done by fellow Image Comics creator Jim Lee. But all that aside, how was Marvel Comics number 1000? Well, I want to go through today some of my favorite pages from this issue, and I'm going to rank them. But like most anthology titles, there's a lot of writers and artists involved, so there's going to be a lot of different opinions about what happens to be the best. I think we might be able to agree on what's number 1, but as always, I'm curious about what you think, so let me know in the comments below after you watch and find out my opinions on this new issue. I'll also mention that I was inspired by a couple different artists in this comic, J. Scott Campbell, Kia Asamiya, as well as above, I'm doing my version of Wolverine based on a drawing by Salvador Larroca. Let's talk about some of the good stuff in this issue of Marvel Comics 1000. Let's give an honorable mention, well, more than that, to writer Al Ewing, who is doing an amazing job as a real continuity nerd, and I mean that with the greatest amount of respect. Like, this guy really does know how to tie together 80 years of publishing history in sort of an ongoing narrative that's threaded throughout this one-shot. To let you know basically what the structure is of Marvel Comics 1000. Marvel Comics has been around in one form or another, either as Timely Comics or Atlas Comics, and then, as we know today, Marvel Comics, for 80 years, since 1939, with the initial Marvel Comics number 1 from Timely, featuring the original appearance of the first Human Torch. So for this issue, what Marvel decided to do, I'm assuming part of it was C.B. Cebulski's decision as editor-in-chief to make every single page in this one-shot, actually a two-shot, since there will be a Marvel Comics 1001 coming out soon, but every page in 1000 represents a year of Marvel history. It's not always, exactly this happened in this year, and there's a lot of freedom for the writers and artists to choose how they're going to spin that page, but that's how they're doing it. 1939 gets a page, 1940 gets a page, 1941 gets a page, and so on and so forth. A lot of the early pages, and again, a lot of the pages threaded throughout the book, are by writer Al Ewing, who loves Marvel continuity, loves the Marvel Universe, and has come up with sort of a great framing device for a lot of the book, but not all of the book. There's also some pages that are loosely or not at all connected to this ongoing story by Ewing. But Ewing, very briefly, and there are some spoilers here if you were looking to pick up the title. Remember, it's $10. But if you're looking to pick it up, maybe skip past the spoilers, or come back to the video after you've read the comic. But Ewing has created a new MacGuffin, a new power item in the Marvel canon called the Eternity Mask, which has some interesting connections to classic Golden Age and Silver Age characters such as the Masked Rider. And there is a preview of something to come, not to give too much away, but it looks like we're going to be seeing a new character called the Masked Raider. And again, a bit of detail on this Eternity Mask. It seems like it's basically taken in some way from the Aspect of Eternity, which is one of the cosmic characters. I believe, well, I don't want to say created by Starlin without knowing for sure. It might have been a Kirby character, now that I think about it. But if you've read the Infinity Gauntlet comics or the Infinity War, you've seen Eternity as a character before. So that is sort of an interesting approach to making a thorough line for Marvel history. Going all the way back to, I think, the earliest iteration in this book is there's a page for the Black Knight in the Middle Ages fighting someone wearing the Eternity Mask. And if you read the book, you wear the Eternity Mask, and then you have the power to match, not to beat, but to match whoever it is that you are going up against. So, pretty much a useful item for any vigilante, any superhero, or for that matter, supervillain. So we got to be careful about who has their hands on it. But who does, that's sort of an ongoing mystery that we will discover. Apparently, it's teased here next year, 2020. But I want to go in now to some of the, in my opinion, some of the greater pages from this issue of Marvel Comics 1000. Let's just count it down. So starting at number 10. Number 10, I'm giving it as a tie, actually. I'm not sure exactly which of these I like the most, because there's a Hellcat page from 1945 written by Stuart Immonen with great art by Stuart Immonen. And again, if you've watched my channel before, you know that I really do enjoy Stuart Immonen's art, so it's nice to see him come back from semi-retirement, full retirement, to do at least this one page. A lot of vibrant movement, great character work in this single page. Really great. But tied with that, in my opinion, I also liked the 1975 page for the Punisher, which had art by Lionel Francis Yu. So Punisher plus Yu, always a great combination. But the thing that's lacking in both these pages, why they're so far down on the list, still top 10, well, 10 and 11, is that the story didn't really hook me. The art is why I'm here for those pages. But as we go down the list, there's going to be a couple of pages, again, with great art, but especially at the top. Some of my favorites in this issue are story-oriented. So at number 9, we've got 2007's The Family Hulk, written by Greg Pak and illustrated by Takeshi Miyazawa. And I really like this. It's kind of a sweet done in one. Well, they're all done in one in this issue, done in one page. Sort of ode to the Hulk's claim that he wants to be alone. And the Hulk family shows up on this page, including She-Hulk, Amadeus Cho, all your favorites, I think Doc Samson. So great art by Miyazawa and a nice little one-page strip written by Greg Pak. Next up, we've got, tied for number 7, so 7 and 8, whichever you choose. In my opinion, I really liked 1991 and 1992's Liefeld X-Force page and 92 Larson Spider-Man page. And it's interesting to me that, these, if we're being honest here, 1988 to 1992 Marvel was all about X-Men and Spider-Man. And that was in large part due to the work by not just Liefeld and Larson, but also McFarlane on Spider-Man and Lee on X-Men and Silvestri on X-Men, and of course Chris Claremont writing X-Men. But all those guys, all those artists left in 92 to start Image Comics, and some of them, like McFarlane, have said things along the lines of, why would I go back to Marvel? Why would I work for them again? It's like going back to high school after you graduated. So it's very rare, if ever, that McFarlane's come back. I think he inked a Quesada piece for a 9/11 memorial comic, the Heroes book that Marvel put out after the September 11th attacks in 2001. But besides that, he never comes back. Silvestri has come back. He's done X-Men art and Hulk art since, leaving to start Top Cow at Image, but he's not in this book. Jim Lee's been exclusive at DC for, close to, more than a decade now. So even though, Jim Lee Batman is great, but I think what everyone really wants to see is Jim Lee X-Men. Unfortunately, not in this issue, but these 2 pages by Larson and Liefeld. If we can't have Lee on an X-Men page, these guys are great too. It's just why they couldn't get all the Image founding fathers. It's beyond them. Some of those guys like McFarlane, they're just never coming back. But anyway, next up we've got, in my opinion, another tie, X-Men pages. X-Men pages not with art by Silvestri or Lee, but X-Men pages for celebrating the years 2000 and 2003. The 2000 page written by Claremont with art by Salvador Larroca, which they worked together on Extreme X-Men around that time. And also, I think that page was celebrating when Claremont initially returned to the title, which was also around the time the first X-Men film came back. That was kind of an abrupt run, but it was nice that he had... Well, it's nice every time Claremont writes the X-Men, in my opinion. But I liked the art by LaRocca here, Gambit's hair. The flip was kind of fun. And Claremont, it's just a nice sort of little X-Men poem by Claremont. There's not a lot of plot here, just sort of a reiteration of the X-Men's purpose and duty in life. And then 2003, apparently the biggest deal in 2003 for Marvel was celebrating when manga artist Kiya Asamiya came and did a short run on Uncanny X-Men. But you'll notice this page not written by the guy who wrote that run, Chuck Austin, who I believe at this point may be persona non grata at Marvel. I don't think the fans, at the very least, were ever huge fans of Chuck Austin. But that Asamiya run, that was fantastic. I loved it, and it was nice to see another page from him. Great designs, too, like sort of neo X-Men designs here, very similar to things that you might have seen in the one-shot Millennial Visions back in the day. And one other thing on the Claremont page, his poem, his sort of just X-Men ode is nice, but I think it would have been even neater if he had done some sort of like wrap-up of some long-standing plot thread that he never got around to, such as, I don't know, like Seraph was actually Wolverine's mother the whole time, even though I know, like with the Origin miniseries in 2003, that's kind of more than we can ask for. Continuity is such that, and Claremont's always been respectful of continuity, even stuff he doesn't write, that at this point, even if he intended for Seraph to be Wolverine's mother, and there were clues back in the day, in issues like 268 of X-Men, I think Marvel Comics Presents #2. But at this point, too late. That ship has sailed. Anyway, next up we've got #4. I really, really enjoyed the Kelly Thompson 2002 Elsa Bloodstone story, title being Monsters. Cute little shark monster that she's got to deal with art by Pepe Larraz. Pepe Larraz or Larez? I wish I was getting the pronunciation right, but I can't be sure. But I remember getting that Bloodstone miniseries back in the day, back in 2002, I guess. And it's neat that they celebrated this character. Of course, she is also maybe more famous now for appearing in the Warren Ellis series Next Wave. But this was a really great, done in one page Elsa Bloodstone story. Monsters. Then we get to the top 3. So, top 3. Number 3, in my opinion, Gerry Conway, writing... What was this? Because of Her, with art by Greg Land, featuring Mary Jane, reminiscing on the death of Gwen Stacy. Now, it's incredible. This is a tearjerker. And it's incredible that Gerry Conway is able to, still have this touch with these characters after working on them for so many decades, initially writing that original story the night Gwen Stacy died. It's absolutely amazing that he still, has this sort of feel for the characters, especially considering, he's in person, he can be a bit of a mercenary about why Gwen Stacy, quote unquote, had to die. You can look up interviews with that, and I've asked him in person at a convention in Vegas one time, like, what was your thinking with killing Gwen Stacy? He was like, well, she was too perfect, she had to go. So there's kind of an outside canon, to break kayfabe in wrestling terms, an outside the canon reason for doing it, a real life reason for doing it, and then when you do it, you gotta make people feel it. You gotta get those tears. You gotta get people crying. And I'll admit it, this brought me close. Very sweet story. Number 2, J. Scott Campbell absolutely kills it with the 2010 page MJ Memoirs, doing a recap of the history of Mary Jane. And this is sort of, a couple of these pages do this in Marvel Comics 1000, where it's not really an in-universe story, it's a lot of breaking the fourth wall. Although, ironically enough, the only character that traditionally breaks the fourth wall that does it here is, I think, Deadpool. I don't think She-Hulk breaks the fourth wall in this issue, but Deadpool does, and Hercules does, and there's a couple other characters that do, and of course MJ on this page breaks the fourth wall and is talking to the reader. And it's just great. It's just charming. It's really... Artists will tell you, or people will tell you that you don't necessarily have to be born talented. But when I see someone like J. Scott Campbell who won, like Nintendo Power, create a Mega Man character contest in the 4th grade and was like selling work for national syndication in student yearbooks, before he graduated high school, and was working on Gen 13, really high selling Image Comics before he was out of his teenage years. It's just, on the one hand, yeah, there's a lot of skill and practice that goes into it, but on the other hand, it's just like, I really think J. Scott Campbell's he's just born with it. He has a skill that it's amazing. He's the best there is at what he does, and that is making cute Mary Jane comics. I wish there were more sequential art story pages by J. Scott Campbell, but at the very least, next week, he's got some more pages in Spawn 300, so he knows if there's an anniversary book, if there's a big deal coming up, he'll be involved in that. And then number one, my absolute favorite page, and it was a bit of a surprise for me because I have not previously enjoyed a lot of Brad Meltzer's work. I can appreciate that he's a good writer, but I think a lot of fans out there will agree with me that the work he did on Identity Crisis is kind of tone deaf for superheroes. It's not just vaguely inappropriate, but super inappropriate for the material he was working with. But all that being said, he had the absolute best page in this issue with 1984's We're Calling Him Ben. I won't even spoil this one, but if you read it, you remember We're Calling Him Ben. You know why it's called that. I can't even talk about it too much without feeling a little choked up, a little emotional. It's a very sweet story with great art by fairly new Marvel Comics superstar, Julian Totino Tedesco, who's done work covers for The Life of Captain Marvel and a variant cover, like the 80s variant cover with She-Hulk for this issue of Marvel Comics 1000. And they both just do killer work on this. It's incredible. So overall, I have to say there's 10 excellent, solid pages here at the very least. Probably more than that. Are there, more than 80 pages worth? I don't know. There's some duds in here, in my opinion, and probably in your opinion too if you read the book. But if you got the $10 to spare, this is a fairly good anniversary issue, and I think stronger on the whole than Action Comics 1000. To be honest, I never read Detective Comics 1000. But next week, I'll check in on Spawn 300 and see how that compares too in terms of these big anniversary issues. So until then, everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, as always, I ask that you please smash that like button. Also, why not subscribe? Tap the bell for notifications and leave a comment below with what you thought. If you're an artist yourself, also, as I always say, you got to keep drawing. You got to draw every day. It's the only way to get better. It's the only way to eventually get as good as J. Scott Campbell. Not even close. Not even close, at least on my part. But it's not going to stop me from trying. All right, so until next time, artists, keep drawing.